Hello. You ever had that little twinge first thing in the morning? No? You're probably one of the lucky ones. A lot of people do, including me. And why? Well, could be hundreds of reasons. In my case, gardening over the weekend. But it could be lifting something out of the car. Maybe just overdoing it at work the day before. Better get a move on. Get a move on. Funny expression, that. Some of us it means hurry up. Others, get on with it. But moving is something we all do every single day. And we bend, stretch, and twist even before we go to work. So, here we are, all set for another hard day. But chances are our muscles are already on overtime. Mind you, that could have something to do with the way we move. Perhaps we thought a bit more about that. I mean, a little twinge in the shoulder is one thing, but I've still got a hard day in front of me. I'm not the only one, am I? See what I mean? Lifting, bending, twisting, pushing and pulling. Movements we make at home and here at work. And let's be honest, we don't think about them at all. If we did, there wouldn't be as many of us off work with strained muscles, twisted ankles or bad backs. And it's that kind of injury that accounts for something like 25% of all lost time industrial accidents. Now, I could tell you that all those injuries cost the country over 24 million working days every year. But what about the cost to us? All right, if we're lucky, a little bit of pain and inconvenience. But we could be talking about permanent disability, an injury that could put you out of work for life. And the sad thing is, most of those injuries could be avoided if only there was an easier, more relaxed way of moving. Of course, we all know that it's the muscles in our bodies that perform every movement we make. Up, down, sideways, you name it, the muscles move it. But how many of you know that it's muscle strain that causes most of those injuries I've just been talking about? We stretch just a little bit too far, or bend down to lift something that's just a little heavier than we thought. And, well, not really worth thinking about, is it? Because I wouldn't mind betting that most of you are already saying, so what? Or, it never happened to me anyway. But you know, there's just a chance it might. And there could be a few of you who think it may not be worth taking that chance. And if that's true, stick around, because there's something important we want you to do.
Put your arm out like this. That's right. Now leave it there for a minute. Yeah. To understand.
Human kinetics? Sounds nasty, but luckily it isn't. Not according to this fella, anyway. Doug Payne, Rosper's specialist on the subject. And human kinetics is a technique of moving in a more relaxed and efficient way. And, in case you're wondering what I'm doing this for, Doug's about to tell us what muscle strain really is. And I'll volunteer for anything.
What can you feel?
Well, there's a tension I can feel going across there, down on the shoulder. Here.
Yes, now, that's just a slight strain. So put your arm down, and we'll try and give you some real strain. Hang on a minute.
Thank you very much.
Now, put your hand out.
Yeah.
Now, hold that.
Oh, you're joking. Yes, that's
right.
strain, I can see it.
That's real strain.
Yes, I can gather that. That's lovely.
Now, you hold a heavy weight like that out, arm's length, and you're going to get this stiffening across your shoulders, across your chest, and your lower back.
I see.
Now, let's find another form of strain. This time, what I want you to do is just lean forwards. Keep your feet level, that's right, so your weight's coming on your toes.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
Now, stay there for a minute. Now, how do you feel?
Well, I can feel, what, all up my backs of my legs, across the small of my back.
In the calves?
Pulling, yeah, all the way through, it's pulling.
Right, now straighten up, slowly, that's right.
Yeah.
Now, what's happened inside you now?
But it's relaxed.
You can feel the tension disappearing.
Yes, indeed.
Fine.
Yeah.
Now you know what strain's all about.
Doug, thanks very much indeed.
Not at all.
Oh, do you know what strain's all about, I tell you? It's obvious Doug's right that we all have our limits when it comes to stresses and strains. And I would imagine it's when we exceed those limits, that's when the problems set in. I think what we're going to do is going to have a look at where these stresses and strains occur in everyday life. While you're working, such things as pushing, pulling, turning, twisting, even sitting down. Okay, let's talk about lifting. Now, of course, people have been talking about lifting for years. After all, it's one of the most common handling operations and one that causes thousands of injuries every year. And did you know that despite a move towards better layouts, safer systems of work and better mechanical aids, more people are off work now with some form of strain injury than ever before? Mind you, old Bill here's one of the lucky ones. After all, he's got a machine to do most of his moving work. And even when he does go in for a bit of shifting, there's never any problem. And he's never had a day off work in his life. Now, having watched Bill a few times, I can tell you that he's pretty handy with his forklift truck. Well, he's got to be, hasn't he? I mean, you put too much weight on a forklift, it'll fall over. So Bill checks his load carefully. When he lifts it, he keeps it nicely in balance. Bill is, after all, a careful bloke. And because he's careful, there really shouldn't be any problem when it comes to shifting this box out of the way. Ah, notice anything?
This is the way that Bill approached the box. His feet were level, it's too far away, he made a top-heavy, bending movement, and now it's only the muscles in the backs of his legs and in his back that's stopping him from falling over. And already I'm in a great deal of tension before I even pick up the box.
And presumably this is where a lot of people do their backs in.
Yes, if the box is heavier than they thought, or they make a sudden snatch, or twist, or jerk, then that could cause some tear in a muscle or a ligament.
I see, so it's the weight of the box that's the important thing.
Not necessarily so. Often if they're very light loads and you move them often enough, then we get what we call cumulative strain.
Now, what's that?
Well, cumulative strain is the long-term effect of keeping the muscles in tension. Now, I'll tell you what, just get into the position that Bill was in a few minutes ago.
Feet parallel.
All right, now you can feel that stiffening.
Yes, yeah.
Now make that movement, we'll say 10 times.
10 times.
10 times.
Okay.
Okay, up.
1, 2, 3.
How do you feel?
I'm feeling it already. 6, I think. 7,
Now,
8,
you're nearly there.
9, 10.
Now, no, only 10 times. Now this time, when you straighten up, you'll feel that the tension has remained in your back. Now that's cumulative strain. Now you can imagine that if you had a job which involved you making that movement, say, 10 times a minute, 60 minutes an hour,
8 hours a day.
5 days a week, yes, 50 weeks of the year, 25, 30 years, what sort of state would you be in?
Exhausted, I should think. And would I be the only one? Because there are, as Doug suggests, millions of us making just that kind of harmful movement every single day, putting our muscles under constant and unnecessary tension. The longer we keep it up, the more the muscles stiffen, and when the muscles become stiff, they become more prone to injury. Anyway, let's talk about the ways of avoiding all that.
Now, you remember a little earlier, Robin, we were talking about human kinetics and saying that it's a technique of movement using the body in the most efficient and relaxed way.
Mm-hmm.
If we have to perform a task that involves the lowering of our head or the lowering of our hands, the important thing is that we don't make what we call a top-heavy bending action. Now, to avoid this, what we do is to progressively relax as we go down from the feet upwards. Mm-hmm. And when we want to make the upward movement, it's the head that comes up first, and we progressively rise like, if you like, a puppet on a string. Let me show you.
I see, yes. Could you show us that a bit slower?
Yes, and I'll talk you through it this time. Okay? I approach the keys. I mustn't look down. First thing that happens, I relax my knees and progressively drop from my feet upwards. At the end of the downward movement, my head drops. So as it comes up first on the upward movement, my back is automatically straight as I'm taking the load.
Thank you, Doug. You see, that's a perfect example of a simple base movement with a small object. How do we apply that to a bigger object, say, Bill's box, for instance?
Well, Bill's box is exactly the same as the keys. It's the approach that's the important thing, and it wouldn't matter if it was Bill's box or a sack of potatoes, a bag of coal, a dustbin, or something like that. I walk up to the box, I don't look down, I start by relaxing my knees. This allows my feet to adjust, and then I progressively drop from the feet upwards. The end of the downward movement, my head drops, it comes up first, and it's that automatically straightens my back as I take the load and walk away.
Makes it look easy, doesn't it? Mind you, we don't all have the advantage of a box parked perfectly in the middle of a room, do we? Now, you've got a bag hard up against the wall. How'd you cope with that?
Shouldn't be any problem, but first of all, I think we ought to notice two things. First of all, we can see the weight. It's actually marked on it here. We can see it's 20 kilograms, so it's quite heavy. Secondly, we must look and see what sort of package it is, because it's, in this case, smooth polythene. There's going to be a risk of it slipping out of my hands, so I'm going to use a pair of gloves like these. Now, the actual moving of the bag is exactly the same as moving Bill's box, but it is going to take place actually in two stages. I'm going to, first of all, lift the bag up, and then I'm going to tilt it onto one foot, like so. All the weight's going on my right foot. I lift the bag, my left foot's already pointing out in the direction in which I wish to turn, and then when I come to put it down, exactly the same thing applies. It's a base action. I'm as close to the bench as I can possibly get.
Great, but there is one thing I noticed, Doug. When you picked it up, your back was slightly bent.
Well, if consciously keeping a straight back throughout a movement is what some people teach, then I'm sorry, I can't agree with it. And I'll show you why.
Fair enough.
Here's a chap with a straight back. He's kept his back straight right through the first part of the movement. His muscles are already under a great deal of tension, just to keep him in balance. Watch this. Walk up to the load, progressively drop from the feet upwards. At the end of the downward movement, when my head drops, my back will in fact be bent slightly. But because the head comes up first, that's what automatically straightens the back, and away I go.
Right. So, there you are. The same good movement principles as applied in lifting. Okay, maybe some of you lift drums or coils of wire, but we're still looking for that same good movement, whatever you lift, or however often you lift it. And there's good movement here, putting things down. But you can see that same base movement, as Doug calls it, relaxing from the knees, adjusting the feet to safeguard balance. Carrying. Firm hold, elbows tucked well in to avoid muscle strain in the shoulders. And this chap, he's got the weight close to his body, held nicely in balance. But what about this? Make this movement on a dance floor and you might end up with first prize. But make the same kind of movement at work for long enough and, well, we've already discussed cumulative strain, and there aren't too many prizes around for that. So is twisting any more harmful than bending down to lift something? After all, most of us twist our bodies like this, just to change directions, moving from one workbench to another, or passing somebody a spanner, or a packet of fags. Again, it doesn't matter where we work or what we're working on. It's a movement most of us make every single day, and one that can cause a lot of problems. Take Chris, for example. He'll tell you that he's already got problems shifting all those packets and boxes to places up and down the country. He'll also tell you that he gets the odd twinge in the shoulder and backache. But he doesn't really understand why.
Well, before we analyze Chris and his box, I'd just like to show you an interesting point. Imagine I've just cleaned my car and you've kindly offered to wring out my car leather.
Yep.
Okay, now hold it there. See that you've moved from a comfortable position into what's a very uncomfortable position. In fact, there's a great deal of tension in the cloth, but there's even more in your arms and across your shoulders. Now, you watch how I go about it. I'm going to start in the uncomfortable position and move into the comfortable position.
Right, yes, of course.
Chris is doing exactly the same thing. He's starting the movement in a relatively comfortable position and then moving into a more and more uncomfortable position. As he twists, the muscles tighten, and this is placing a great deal of strain on his lower back.
So how would you do it?
One hand underneath, one hand around the back.
Okay.
Firm grip. Hold the box close into myself. My weight is now going onto my right foot. by simply transferring my weight onto my left foot, which I've already pointed out to the left, I'm already turning in the direction in which I intend to go. And a base movement to put the box down.
Great. Thanks again, Doug. Marvellous, isn't it? Makes it look so easy. Mind you, he's been doing it for about 20 years or. Well, when you think about it, I mean, the amount that I've picked up in the last few minutes, got to be quite easy to grasp, hasn't it? And that basic movement is something you could practice, oh, wherever you might be, in the office or on the factory floor, even in the canteen. Even here, having lunch or just a cup of coffee. If we think about what we're doing, we can avoid unnecessary strain. And there's nothing like sitting down to get us relaxed. Or is there? You see, according to Doug, we can do ourselves a lot of harm by sitting badly. No, really, he's the expert after all. Anyway, since most of us spend a great deal of time sitting, it's probably worth having a look at. And because this is a simple demonstration, well, I think even I can do it. Now, this is how most of us sit down. We move backwards towards the chair. We normally keep our feet together and we just kind of fall into it. Now, if I want to sit straight, I've got to tighten muscles, right? And the tendency is for me to slouch forward, which means I'm placing strain on my back. And I don't want to do that, do I? Which means there has got to be a better way. So, if I adjust my feet before I sit down, one foot as far back as possible to safeguard my balance, I relax my knees, and I lower myself into the back of the chair. Now, already I feel more relaxed. My back's held in an upright position. I can do whatever I like without strain. I can type a letter, solder a component, eat baked beans on toast, or, well, drink a cup of coffee. Cheers. Pushing. How often do we do that every day? If it ain't pushing, it's pulling.
Now, Robin, let me show you an easy way to do that.
Wish you would.
Show you what you were doing. You're standing too far away from the trolley, your feet were level, top-heavy bending action, hands on the top, elbows sticking out. And it's just sheer brute force getting the trolley to move, and all you're really doing is to push it into the ground. Watch this. Relax my knees, just the same base movement again, adjust my feet. My hands go on the top of the trolley, my elbows are tucked in, my arms are locked off. Now, by transferring my weight from my back foot onto my front foot, I'm pushing the trolley over the ground.
Hard work, eh? But if you're still not convinced, old Doug's got his own little way of proving his point.
Put your hands on my shoulders.
Yep.
You're completely off balance. I've adjusted my feet because my knee's unlocked.
All right.
And now try and push me. You carry on pushing. Careful, I don't want you straining yourself. That's enough. I'll show you something else. Stay where you are.
Okay.
Take a seat. You're talking about pulling a few minutes ago. Pulling, exactly the same base action as pushing. I'm going to pull you out of the chair, but you could imagine you're a length of rope or a steel bar in a rack or something like that. Unlock my knees, adjust my feet. I'm going to take hold of your arm, holding you from underneath, and now all I'm going to do is to transfer my weight from my front foot to my back foot, and out you come in the chair. Simple.
Easy as pie. Doug, thanks very much indeed.
See you.
There you are. Pushing and pulling. All obviously based on the same principles as every other movement we've looked at. Twisting, turning, standing, even sitting down. Well, I hope this last 20 minutes has given you interest, as it has me, to start you thinking in the right direction. Mind you, nobody's going to expect you to get it right first time. And like anything else worthwhile, it may take a bit of work. But if you can just start putting the principles of good movement into practice, you're already on the way to reducing the risk of injury. And remember those 24 million lost working days every year. So, what we're looking for are good habits. And once we've got into them, let's bring them home. And if we can, pass them on to others. Now watch this. See? Okay, it may not be perfect, but she's on the right lines. And so's Bill now that he's had a bit of instruction. Again, his base movement may not be perfect, but already his job has become easier, and he's reducing the risk of a strain injury. and using good foot movement to change direction without twisting. It's the same good habit that Chris is starting to get into at work. It makes sense to use good foot movement and body weight when you're pushing a barrow at work. Then it makes sense to use the same thing when you're pushing a neighbor's car. And when you want to sit down, remember the principles. 1 foot back and lower yourself right into the chair. It produces muscle tension whether you're reading a magazine at home or typing a letter in the office. So, there you are. Now it's all up to you. After all, it's your body and you're entitled to do what you like with it. But in the end, it comes down to a simple choice. You can be a good mover or just another name in the accident book. Think about it. But get a move on, eh?